Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided.
This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlaw Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlaw Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Welcome. We return to Access to Democracy, and as we're pushing for our 1,000th interview, we have a return guest. I think it's his 16th or 17th appearance, Rick King.
Still alive
Welcome
and kicking,
back.
Alan. Thanks.
And I had Rick down as the Global Technology Officer of Thomson Reuters, but he's really the Chief Technology Officer of Thomson Reuters and does a little bit of everything.
Glad to be back with you, Alan.
And Tammy Menzel, who was the publisher of Minneapolis St. Paul Business Magazine and Journal and whatever, was a first-time guest. And nice to have you here.
Thank you for having
In fact, we have your journal right
Yep.
here. We can hold that up for the camera and maybe get a shot of it. I don't know
Absolutely.
if Adana can focus in on that. There we go. So normally at this point, we would just run computer graphics. So I'll give you a little bit of background about Tammy, who is an Eagan resident. She's a lifelong Minnesotan. She started out 12 years ago with the Journal and as an account executive.
Correct, yep,
Worked your way up
absolutely.
to publisher, and where can you go from here?
You know, you just never know.
But circulation is going up.
Circulation's going up, yep.
So that's a good thing.
It is a very good thing.
And this is your first appearance here, as I said. You're on the boards of several organizations, including the St. Paul Chamber, and also, is it the Alliance for Women in Minnesota?
Alliance for Women in Media.
In media.
Yep,
Okay,
absolutely.
now Rick, this reminds me, because you've been here so many times, in fact, in the book about the show, which I'm just getting underway, I talk about my appearances on the Joe Franklin TV show back in New York. And Joe took a liking to me, and I was on many times. Every time I would come on, he would say, okay, today you're the lawyer. Today you're the journalist. Today you're going to be a book reviewer. And so you've worn many hats here.
I have a
And
few.
not only from Thomson, not only from the Thomson endeavors, not only for the fact that you are really largely responsible for the facility that we're in, but also with the Ultra High Speed Broadband Commission. But today the two of you are here for the Metropolitan Airports Commission, of which you both serve as recent appointees. So I want to ask you, how does Delta get away with moving its training facility out of Eagan and 200 jobs out of Eagan when they pledged in the takeover that they wouldn't do that? Who drew the papers to allow them to get away with that?
Take it away, Rick.
Thanks
I'll
a
leave
lot.
that one
Thanks
for
a
you, since you've been here 16 times.
Well, we don't speak for, neither of us speak for Delta, of course, Alan, and Delta's a major component of the transportation at Minneapolis St. Paul Airport. So they're a great partner in total. In this case, of course, the only binding deal other than the words that were said after the merger was the commitment that from financing that they inherited from Northwest on some bonding money. and the bonding money was still outstanding, and the agreement was that certain number of job levels would be maintained, that the hub would be maintained, that a certain number of flights would be maintained at certain levels in the state. There was language about the pilot training center and the flight attendant training center, which is what's called Building N in Eagan, the old Northwest or NATCO training building, that for the people that probably know it by that because they've been around for a while. When they just announced this, which was actually this week, the airline also announced they're going to repay the bond. So in essence, they've, I suppose, held up to those agreements because they said, since we are going to move the training center, we'll repay the bond and we'll have met our commitment. That's what we heard in the announcement and what was explained to us at our meeting, which was just a couple of days ago from when we're shooting this. To be fair, I looked at some of the job information too, and I think your number is accurate. Today's employment level for Delta is about 12,800, I believe. So the 400 that go away, which involve any of the trainers that are based here and some technical people that do a lot of procedure manuals and so forth, that's about the 400 number that you spoke about. The guarantee with the bond that Delta did at the Delta recommitted to at the time of the merger was 10,000 employees in Minnesota, so they're above that. The commitment was, I think, 480 flights per day. They're above that. So from their perspective, and I'm not defending them, I'm just trying to give the
That
facts.
is, however, one of the best corporate responses that would be possible under those circumstances.
You know, if I was going to do that, if I was going to close those buildings and wanted to consolidate, I would certainly want to have the employment numbers and the flight numbers in my favor and repay the money. As a corporate person, I understand they have two training facilities. The one here did not have enough room to expand to be the one for the airline. The one in Atlanta did have some spare capacity, so they can combine into one. I understand that everybody's being pressed for money savings these days. Fuel prices are costing Delta some number of billions of dollars more than they had originally planned. So you can be sympathetic for that as a business person. However, as a Minnesota person, I want to see the hub maintained, I want to see employment levels maintained, and I want to see a viable airline here, which I think we still have, but every little bit that gets chipped away,
Right.
you worry about that.
You
And,
do.
know, I worry about it from a business perspective, and I'm sure a lot of your readers, that's the way they look at it. Direct
Exactly.
flights to places,
Right,
right?
because there's
Now,
no company headquarters
In
here.
1989, there was the Metropolitan Airport Planning Act, which created the commission. How many members are there on the commission?
There's 15, including the chair.
And tell us, what's the function of the commission?
The commission is to help oversee operations at the airport. It's kind of a small city in itself, so we help with anything from strategic planning to the Concourse G that's being redeveloped. Rick served in
We're
the capacity
talking
longer
about
than me.
Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yep,
International.
international airport.
Which I think
so-
is still international.
Yeah.
At least Sun Country is flying overseas. So it's a-
Exactly.
Well,
They are.
Delta flies to Paris, London, Amsterdam. They just canceled or announced the cancellation of the Mexico City route. Iceland Air flies to Reykjavik. Sun Country
So
flies.
we remain
So-
international.
And and also Delta flies to Tokyo still.
And Sun Country's adding more international flights too.
Yeah.
So
In fact, they're flying, I think, to London
Yep,
this
London.
summer, and of course to Mexico.
yep, and they're doing something with trying to work with the military a little bit.
They are. They are
Yep.
bringing soldiers back and not charging them $200 for the fourth bag.
They reimburse
But,
though, so
My
right?
my friends to the north also need to be acknowledged. They fly to Canada.
Oh, there you
Yes,
go.
indeed.
See?
Yes, indeed. Okay, so, but it's not just Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport.
No, it's the
You have
reliever airports as
really
well.
have 7 airports altogether, is that?
Absolutely.
And as the commission, you oversee all of them.
We do. We do have, we vote on certain things and give advice on others. And I'm fairly new still, so I'm sure I'll learn more about what's all involved. But so far, we've kind of got thrown into the fire with everything that's happening right now. So it's been a good, quick learning experience.
Now, according to the 2010 report to the legislature by the commission oversees 153,000 jobs. The business revenue is $10.7 billion, and the local purchases are $1.4 billion. I assume that's money that's taken in at the airport by the stores and things like that. So that's one of the big situations. What do you have to do with security?
Well, security, there are a couple of different entities. So if we start from the inside out, the airport has its own fire department, has its own police department, and it has its own ordinances. As Tammy said, it's like a city, a little city. So the commission is in fact like the city council. And so we supervise those pieces, and law enforcement would take care of issues that occur at the airport, like your regular local police department would take care of them in your city. They come to aid their EMTs. They also would arrest people, or they've been known to give speeding tickets at that little slow area.
Or get people out of the waiting area in baggage claim.
Right.
Many times.
Yes.
All of those things. Now, the security at the airport itself is governed by the federal government. The Transportation Security Agency, the TSA, are the ones who do the screening of the passengers going through the gates, and they screen the luggage going through the system. That's their job. You will see often some airport police at some of those gates, but their job is not to screen the passengers. That's a federal.
Yeah, you see airport police, unlike overseas, where you see soldiers with AK-47s or automatic weapons at most of the overseas locations where you go through an airport. You don't see that here, but you do see airport police. You do occasionally see military people in the terminal as well.
Right.
What about air marshals? That's a federal?
That's a federal program, and those are plainclothes people that fly on various randomly chosen, from our perspective, flights that are there in case of some kind of event in the cockpit.
Other federal agents, I assume.
They are federal agents.
I say other federal agents, such as FBI and people like that, you wouldn't have any jurisdiction over, and you probably don't even know when they're coming in and out.
No, no idea. And we don't know anything about the federal marshals, air marshals either. Our part of the security, we give the space to the federal government. We give them the power, the electricity they need to run their machines. They're like a tenant of sorts. They do their job.
And I think if officers are hired for the actual airport, they come to the commission to get sworn in. That would be the other role with security.
Now, one of the problems we've had here in Eagan, and we both live in Eagan, has been noise from the planes.
Yep.
You have jurisdiction over noise as well on the commission, is that
Yeah,
correct?
we do work with Chad Leckvey at MAC on the noise issues in this community. Absolutely.
And I noticed there are days when they use different runways when the noise is completely abated, and other days when actually we hear noise, even though my house is not that close to the airport, but on a straight line it's probably not that far away either.
Right. Yep. They try to keep most of the flights to the corridor, but sometimes things happen where they have to shift. So.
What about environmental impact? Does the commission have anything to do with that?
We do. We just heard from somebody, I can't remember his name, he was there yesterday, just
Right.
briefly stopped by after. So there's a meeting next month in regards to the environmental impact.
Every project has that is some type of construction project would have a and environmental impact. I think the one we heard about was one dealing with Terminal 2 and an expansion of the customs area
Yeah.
there. And any construction job, any runway repaving job, any type of thing that actually does anything to land would require an environmental impact statement and a whole set of worksheets and public hearings to go through those. And that's quite extensive. And the packet that we saw there, I think we got 100 pages on that committee that you
Yes.
serve on. And I think 80 pages were the
Were the
environmental
environmental.
worksheet for that one project. It's quite a extensive look at that.
And you actually have a lot of other transportation in and out of the airport. You have buses, you have trains, certainly into, well, what's now called Terminal 1 and Terminal 2, which we spent $2 million to change from Humphrey and Lindbergh, which I can't understand and never have and never will. But coming into Terminal 1, you have trains, you have buses, you have limousines, you have cabs, you have different types of service, for instance, from airport people where they park their cars and things like that. Do you have jurisdiction over all of that?
All of those people that serve that have to be licensed by the airport ultimately, and some of them you have more control over. The taxi cab, the parking, and the limousine service, you do different kinds of regulation with compared to recruiting Metro Transit to bring buses there. There was a lot of advocacy and money spent to make sure that the light rail had a station there. That was something that we felt was the predecessor, the MAC predecessors of ours, felt was pretty important for the development of the airport.
I don't know about Tammy, but you're not new to airports. You've been involved in, is it Eden Prairie?
Right, and actually,
And for some
we
years.
both have been involved. She's been involved in the Egan local airport commission, and I was involved in the one in Eden Prairie. And probably the biggest difference, I think, the concern of the Egan one was more focused on the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport.
Definitely.
The one that I was on in Eden Prairie was more concerned locally about the reliever Flying Cloud that's based inside of the city of Eden Prairie. But we both had some exposure to this because of those activities.
And then there's the St. Paul Airport, which goes underwater once a year, to everybody's
Al, it
consternation.
didn't
It didn't go under.
Didn't
No,
go
this
under.
year
We had
it
the flood
didn't.
wall.
This year it didn't,
A
but,
couple years ago,
Yeah.
they spent money to put a flood wall, removable flood wall.
and it did
that's-
work this year.
It did
It
work
did
this
work.
year, and I think it worked last year. They put up half of it last year,
Yeah,
if I
they said
recall.
it pretty much paid for itself.
Yeah,
And who pays for that? Does that come out of commission funds? Or
that's
does,
commission funds. There's usually, most of the projects the commission does, I think, involve commission funds, which come from the commission receipts, which come mostly from the airlines and the concessions.
I was just going
as
to
well as
ask
the
that.
federal
Where does the
government.
commission get its money?
Yeah, the commission doesn't, it has authority as an entity, almost like a city, to tax, but it doesn't do that. So nobody sees that on their property, their property tax.
Right.
They do bond for money like a city could, but they raise their money through user fees and concession fees, like food. Parking is probably one of the biggest ones. Every time a plane lands, there's money involved in the weight of the plane, the number of passengers deplaned, the gate they use. You get funds for all of that.
The gate fees, I think every airline has to pay that gate fee, is that right?
So that's how the revenue is generated. The federal government on some of the bigger projects, and I think this was true, it's true of runways, the runway that expanded and MSP that brings a lot of the planes over Egan. Most of that gets paid for by the federal government after it all goes through the approval process. The local puts in some money from the local airport.
Now, do you have any jurisdiction over the airport in Duluth, or is that a separate entity?
That's separate. Our jurisdiction is a 35-mile radius outside of the City Hall of Minneapolis or St. Paul. And that's a very odd jurisdiction.
That
but
is.
It's essentially the jurisdiction that the Met Council has. So our footprint and their footprint is the same. We have our districts that we represent are usually about twice the size of one of theirs. So we have half the number of people that they do.
Control towers staffed by federal employees?
Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, staff the control towers, and there's a lot of entities. That's one of the things that people don't always get about the complexity, that you're dealing with federal entities like TSA, FAA, you're dealing with the cities that you are actually physically in, Minneapolis, St. Paul, or the metro area that you're in, cities of Bloomington, Eagan, so forth, Burnsville, that are interested in, not just in having an airport, but what being a neighbor to the airport, and then the MAC themselves, and then all the airlines and the unions and so forth.
Outside vendors.
Now, do you have to deal with the unions also of the employees, or is that pretty much up to the stores, up to the airlines, up to the individual tenants?
The tenant unions would be up to them, but the MAC, some of the MAC employees are organized in unions, so we do have a human resource committee that deals with the employment aspects of running the airport.
Now, as I was reading the 2010 report to the legislature, which was an interesting 38-page document, preparing for this, I see that you are planning 17 new gates at what I will refer to as the Humphrey Airport, Terminal 2, between now and 2015. Does that mean that you hope to bring in new airlines?
I think that's one of the goals. They were talking about a few that they'd like to, that nothing's been formalized, but they'd like to, and then maybe Sun Country will keep expanding, or some of the other smaller airports. Southwest will fly to more destinations. So
Yeah, one
that
of
would be
the
helpful.
troubles, at least in my mind, with one airline not having a hub, I think having a hub here is great and it's important, but taking 84 or 85% of the business, I think stifles competition, and it would be good to have some of those other airlines. And I know we've had a few come in recent years, and a few are here very peripherally, but not really with strong schedules, so that if we had a couple of other airlines in here, it probably would help cut down the cost to consumers, which is monumental at the present time.
Well, as Tammy said, I think our job, one of the MAC's jobs is to recruit different airlines, new airlines, to come provide service here, and to talk as almost the Chamber of Commerce would, to sell the area, the kind of Fortune 100 businesses we have, those types of things. It's also to keep the existing airlines satisfied, to keep them expanding here. And we've been very fortunate. When Southwest came in a couple of years ago, they've expanded multiple times already. They were very happy that they've come here. They've been very successful here. And my thinking, without knowing anything, is that they would continue to expand. This past 2 weeks ago, I think, Frontier expanded.
As a low-cost carrier, Southwest then would be very competitive with, say, Delta, which might then have to adjust some of its costs to compete.
That's a whole interesting piece. The pricing on airlines, fares it's really quite scientific these days, and I think there are those people that would argue Southwest is becoming not a low-cost airline, but I think they're disruptive a bit when they're there, and I think it's highly competitive, and I think the more service we have out of our airport, the better we are. And it is a known fact, if you look at all of the big hubs where a carrier dominates, those tend to be places where the prices are higher. That's not just a function of Minneapolis, but a function of the hub system.
And of course the people who bear the burden of that are the people that fly. Now, we had a horrendous winter this year, but Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport was able to keep ahead of it. We didn't have any planes that were down on the ground for 3 or 5 or 8 hours. Is ground control and taking care of the runways and all, is that a function of the commission as well?
It's a function of the MAC, yeah, of the people that work for the MAC.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. The people, it's the MAC's job to make sure the runways are in good shape, that they're properly paved and so forth, that the grass is cut, that the snow is removed, that the ice is removed in the most efficient fashion. And frankly, I travel a lot around the world, and it's pretty well known that the airport workers here do a fabulous job of keeping this airport open in some of the worst weather that any people see. And that is a thing that the airlines are very impressed with, because all airports have weather issues.
Right.
Even Atlanta, where it might not snow that often, although it did during the Super Bowl, and they couldn't get the ice, off the streets there, but the airport got the ice out. They have thunderstorms, and thunderstorms close an airport just as rapidly, if they're bad and right over the field, as do snowstorms.
Now, there's also a military facility. There are fighter planes that are kept here. There are military transports that are kept here. Does the MAC have jurisdiction over that, or does the federal government have jurisdiction over that? Because they're right in the other side of the airport.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't think we have anything.
no, the government in that case is a tenant on the airport.
Right.
And so they're a tenant of the MAC, renting hangar space, using the airport like any other tenant, Delta or Signature Aviation would use the airport. So they don't have jurisdiction over, they have jurisdiction over renting and leasing those spaces.
And the safety record at the airport? Good?
Well, you always want to be careful. The safety record there has been good, Alan, and I think there's a lot of hardworking employees that the MAC has that work very hard to keep the airport going first class, and it's the commission's role to make sure we have the best employees running it, and to keep this airport to be really a competitive advantage.
Anything you want to say in the couple of minutes that we have left? I know you're new on the commission, and it's got to be, even though you have some dealings with the Egan
Yeah.
Commission, it's got to be an experience for
It
you.
is an experience. Bert McCasey, who was my predecessor, sent me an email to say congratulations, and he said, "Welcome to graduate school," and I think he's right. Learning something new every day.
Yeah, it really is. We had an orientation. We were just talking about that, reminding ourselves that. What were you saying about how the orientation? There's no breaks, no nothing.
Yeah,
just
it's like
constant
constant
big manual
learning.
to read, and there's a lot of technical information and a lot of things to consider. So it's both
And you have so much
daunting and
spare
exciting.
time.
Yeah, we both have lots of spare
It
time.
amazes me because the fact that Rick is in the country today is just flattering to have him here. It's unbelievable.
No,
But,
don't you believe in that adage that it seems like busy people, I mean, they're always going to be busy, but they always find the time to do certain things, and
Right.
you're more efficient, you just work on it and you make it work.
Absolutely,
I
I would
want to
agree.
thank you both, Tammy Menzel
you.
and Rick King. The first time we've really talked about the MAC, the Metropolitan Airports Commission. Thank you all, and thank you for watching Access to Democracy.